Keeping score with Rick Horrow, Reuters, all of the other vertically integrated platforms we have, and sports and business clearly intersects at the top level, and it's rare we have an opportunity to go through second-generation sports business. I've got to tell you, since we started this whole show early in the last year and a half and my early days in the business, it's fun to deal with how this business has evolved, and we'll get to it. But clearly, growing up in South Florida, where the closest team that we had to baseball was the Atlanta Braves, and seeing how the Braves' first, second, third generation have been so positive for that city and now evolving into another generation. Derek Schiller, President of Business, the Atlanta Braves, that is the specific title. First of all, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for having at the beginning of this such an amazing title. So I am told by a little bird that the only person that has a similar title is Will Ferrell in one of the sports movies. You got to tell me about that.
Well, I think it's the Lego movie that came out last year.
Even better.
Yeah. So I guess the only thing we have in common is probably the fact that we're building stuff. He was building Legos, or his son was, and I'm building a new ballpark and a development. But I'm not sure that I have his comedy. So
nor should you, by the way. But he doesn't have your business acumen, nor your dad's business acumen, frankly, nor anybody else's relating to the way that facility works and the way the Braves work, et cetera. So, yeah, you're building a little project. Why don't you tell us about it?
So we at the Braves are building a brand-new ballpark. It's called SunTrust Park, and it's located on the northwest side of Atlanta. It's about 10, 12 miles away from Turner Field. And probably the most interesting thing about it is we're not only building that ballpark, but we're also building a mixed-use development. It's a $550 million mixed-use development that is all actually master planned with the ballpark. So in that regard, it's pretty revolutionary because it's really the first time that a sports team has embarked on this kind of project all at the same time, master planning and building all at the same time, this ballpark and this development together. So it's really ambitious, but really, really invigorating.
Derek Schiller, President of Business for the Braves. Interesting, invigorating, entrepreneurial, and I dare say a little bit risky, if only because there are a number of other dynamic things that are going on in Atlanta at the same time. Mercedes-Benz Stadium downtown. The irony is the ability for you guys, and I've been in the facility business for 9 million years, how you pulled off the announcement at a time where not too many people expected it. Usually there's a lot of controversy. You just went ahead, announced it, and did it. Kudos to you.
Well, thanks. It was, a lot of people behind the scenes kept their mouths shut, just to be blunt about it. And, we were trying really hard to work with the city and the county who owns Turner Field to try to figure out a way forward. Ultimately, we all reached the conclusion that wasn't possible, and so we were somewhat forced to look around and figure out what was in the best interest of the Braves for the long term. And when we did so, we started to map out our fan base and realized that we had an opportunity to actually build a ballpark that was closer to the center point of our fan base. So that's one of the key prerequisites that we had. And then the other was that we wanted to own real estate around that ballpark because we believe in a philosophy that really takes the fan experience and doesn't start and stop at just where your ticket is given at the gate, but really starts well beforehand. And it's kind of come full circle from some of the older ballparks and sports venues, the ones that people really recognize are some of the great ones out there, such as Fenway Park and Yawkey Way around there, or Wrigley Field and Wrigleyville around there. So we're trying to replicate sort of the experience of all that, and doing it all at once is really the point to it.
Well, and the interesting thing about your dynamics here, obviously, are no more Thrashers, but clearly the Hawks are going upward as far as their on-court prowess. You have a new stadium for the Falcons and a Super Bowl coming, so there is a lot of competition for sports corporate and investment dollars in the marketplace, is there not?
There is. Atlanta is really a unique marketplace when you look at just the sports dynamic, sports entertainment, because of the fact that, as you mentioned, there's the Mercedes-Benz Stadium coming online right around the same time as SunTrust Park. So if you couple those two together, you're talking about $2 billion worth of venues just right there. And then the Hawks have announced that they're going to try to do something with their venue, and now you got the Super Bowl. Obviously, we're going to be interested in trying to get Major League Baseball All-Star Game to come to Atlanta at some point in time. So it's a really great time to be thinking of sports in Atlanta. And I also think it's a really interesting study, if you will, because from a business perspective, we're kind of approaching it in a lot of different ways, none of which I don't think will be wrong, but just different. So Mercedes-Benz Stadium approaching theirs in a really unique way. I think their stadium is going to be fantastic, and obviously has some unique characteristics to it. The roof being one of the ones that I hear a lot about. But in ours, as I said, we are really approaching it to kind of expand upon what the fan experience means in coming to a ball game, so that you come earlier and you have things to do, shopping or restaurants or bars to go to, and stay later after the game and celebrate the Braves' victory by, going to a bar or a music venue or the various things there. And then also having apartments and an office building and various things that kind of all energize that area. So just different approaches, but all unique and hopefully successful collectively.
Unique, collectively successful. You can clearly handle it. I would say, representing all of the people who have come up the traditional way, I guess, the law school, business school, whatever, that it is very unfair, Derek Schiller, president of business at the Atlanta Braves, that we can all do normal business learning and analysis. You get to learn around Thanksgiving dinner from probably one of the best business guys in the history of sports, your dad. Tell us what that was like.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, nepotism here is, in my case, a career builder. It was helpful. I had a father who not only instilled in me a great work ethic and was 23 years military in the Air Force, but after his career pursuits in the military, ended up getting into a substantial sports career as well. Starting with commissioner of the Southeastern Conference and then going on to the United States Olympic Committee, executive director there. And
by the way, it's Harvey, in case anybody doesn't know by now.
Yeah. And then Turner Sports, Yankee Mets, there's a whole host of things. And now he's involved with America's Cup. So I have been the beneficiary of seeing him conduct his business and the way he goes about doing things and the relationships, and being fortunate to meet a lot of the people that have been, sometimes at our dinner table. And so it's been really, really a great experience growing up. And so I thought the transition was really easy for me once I got out of school and figured out kind of what I wanted to do after I got an engineering degree of all things. So now I'm in the sports business. I've been doing so for about 20 years.
Well, we'll get off this one in a minute. I'm interested in a Thanksgiving dinner table conversation where, your dad, who knows a lot about the Atlanta market clearly and knows about Turner and the SEC and the Olympics and all of that, will he ever second guess you openly? And if he does, do you care?
He will second guess me directly to my face all the time. It's one of the things that we did regularly was, he more so than me challenged, anything and everything that I was involved with, questioned it, and that was part of the learnings was always asking unique questions and things that you hadn't thought about. In some ways, actually, I work for Steinbrenner, and they have a little bit in common in that, because you always go into discussions with Steinbrenner the same way that I was sitting around the Thanksgiving table with my dad, and never thinking about the question that might come up. I mean, you always had to be, I would call it almost overly prepared, sort of equating it to, when you're in college and your professor called on you and he asked you the question you were least prepared for. That is somewhat what I experienced not only with my dad, but then later on with working for Steinbrenner.
Yeah, it is interesting to what a training in working for both of them. Back into the interview, Derek Schiller, president of business for the Atlanta Braves. Where do we go in a few years relative to the merger of sports, entertainment, and the fan experience? You build your facility, and it's not really only a ballpark. It's a retail and entertainment center that has a ballpark component as a catalyst. So how do we deal with the decouching piece of this, meaning Turner Sports and FSN South and Sports South, you're involved with all of them and the relationship. You want to maximize viewers, but yet you also want people to get off the couch and come to the facilities and eat in the restaurants and go to the game. Is that competitive or is it synergistic?
Well, I'll use a different way to go at this. So a lot has been talked about technology, and future of sports involves technology. We certainly believe in that. We have a substantial deal that we have with Comcast, and we're going to have best-in-class Wi-Fi and all those things. But at the heart of it, if you reduce it down to its simplest form, attending a sporting event is a choice. It's not a requirement, and it is a social experience. And I think that's true more so in baseball than I would argue in any other sport. First of all, there's no clock. So by its very nature, it's social without having sort of a time limit to it. Baseball lends itself to sitting next to somebody and having a great conversation. And baseball's Americana, and you think about it, and it's a lot defined by, your fan traits are usually defined by what your parents did by bringing you to the game, experiencing a game with your mom or dad. And so I actually think in a lot of ways, sports and the newest sports venues need to embrace that social fabric and do their best to try to create that, because we're never going to be able to compete with a really, really nice couch and a really big screen, high-definition television. But you don't get the same social experience when you're sitting on the couch watching that television that I would argue you do by attending a sports event, hopefully by attending a sports event at a new ballpark with the amenities that you want when going to that.
Interesting dynamic. Just kind of the one last follow-up on that one. Where is the business broadly defined going to be, let's say, in 10 years?
I think it's going to continue to evolve to the point where it does use technology more. I mentioned that earlier, and then what becomes of that, I'm really excited to see it. There's a lot of talk right now about, for instance, virtual reality and how to make virtual reality a component of the sports experience. I'm not sure where that's going to go. I think there's going to be a lot of beta testing of that. We're going to do a little bit of that at SunTrust Park. But I think there's this continuation of creating great moments with people and celebrating those. And, as busy as our lifestyles have now become, and as busy as these communities and cities that we live in have become, I think sports is that continuum that you can look back to and hopefully celebrate. And so my hope is, in a strange way, that in 10 years it doesn't evolve too much beyond where it is today.
What happens first? Vanderbilt wins the SEC in football, or the Braves win the series again?
There's not even a close one on that. The Braves will definitely win the World Series. Although as we speak today, some of the Braves fans out there would probably be non-believers. I think they need to just trust in the fact that rebuilds are tough. We're accelerating ours. I have great faith in what John Sherholtz, John Coppolella, John Hart are doing in creating, this depth of young talent through our minor league system, and then we're going to snatch some of the great talent that exists on the major league level through free agency or trades, and I'm certain we're going to be good very, very soon. And Vanderbilt will always be in the SEC. I'm not sure that means that they will stand a chance, certainly in football and winning the SEC, although they've got a very formidable baseball team and done quite well on that. So I'm proud of them in what they're doing in certain other areas.
Well, listen, you are really a great advocate of your program, and it is consistent that both you and Mark Lazarus sell out SEC football Vanderbilt very quickly and unanimously. Thank you very much. That's pretty damn good.
We've attended enough games where we kind of know what the drill is. We have
very well done.
We occasionally get some glimpses of greatness, and then all of a sudden we're grounded back to reality.
I think fleeting is the right answer. Derek Schiller, President, Business Affairs, Atlanta Braves. Rick Horrow will be back in a couple of minutes.